My ex-wife destroyed my life with 2 years of false abuse allegations. But when I finally gave up on my kids, something unexpected changed everything. The first time my children accused me of abuse, I thought it was just a horrible misunderstanding that would blow over once the truth came out. I had no idea that it was only the beginning of a 2-year nightmare that would cost me my marriage, my relationship with my kids, and nearly my sanity. What happened next taught me that sometimes the only way to survive is to walk away from the people you love most. My life imploded on a Tuesday morning when I woke up to police officers and CPS workers pounding on my front door. The night before had been completely ordinary. I'd come home from work, spent time with my wife Sarah and our kids Emma, 9, and Tyler, 7, gave them their melatonin gummies before bed, then took a shower and made myself dinner while Sarah settled in on the couch where she always slept. She had complications during Tyler's birth that made sleeping flat uncomfortable, so our routine was that she'd sleep propped up downstairs while the kids and I slept upstairs. But according to the officers at my door, my children had run away in the middle of the night and told city officials that I had kicked them out of the house. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. These were my babies, the kids I read bedtime stories to and took to the park every weekend. The idea that they would claim I'd thrown them out into the night was so absurd it felt like I was living in someone else's nightmare. The police separated Sarah and me to get our stories, and somehow they decided our versions didn't match. Within hours, I was arrested for child abandonment and found myself sitting in a jail cell, staring at concrete walls and wondering how my entire world had collapsed in a single morning. I posted bail that same day and went to stay with my parents, terrified that I was going to lose my job, my freedom, and everything I'd worked for. For over a month, I lived in limbo. Every day felt like walking on a tightrope over an abyss, knowing that one wrong move could send me to prison for something I didn't do. The worst part wasn't even the legal uncertainty. It was the way people looked at me when word got out. The sideways glances from neighbors, the sudden silence when I walked into a room, the unspoken assumption that there must be some truth to the allegations. Then came the phone call that changed everything. The CPS caseworker wanted to meet with me because Emma had made additional allegations. She was now claiming I had sexually abused her. I remember dropping the phone and running to the bathroom to vomit, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the porcelain. The accusation was so monstrous, so completely removed from reality, that I couldn't even process how we'd gotten to this point. But when the investigators tried to get details from Emma, she couldn't provide any. She would start crying and become incoherent whenever they pressed for specifics, which finally made them suspicious enough to separate the children and question them individually. That's when Tyler broke down and admitted the truth. Emma had orchestrated the entire thing, convincing him to go along with running away and making up the story about me kicking them out. The relief I felt when the charges were dropped was immediately replaced by a different kind of horror. My own daughter had been willing to destroy my life for what she later admitted was basically a prank. She'd been watching YouTube videos about kids pranking their parents and thought it would be fun to try something similar. The sexual abuse allegation came about because she'd accidentally walked in on Sarah and me in our bedroom months earlier, and when pressed by investigators, her 9-year-old mind had connected those concepts in the most destructive way possible. Emma was immediately put into counseling and psychiatric evaluation, and for a while, I thought we could repair our family. I threw myself into trying to get us all into therapy, individual sessions, family counseling, whatever it would take to understand how we'd gotten to this point and prevent it from happening again. But Sarah kept making excuses and dragging her feet, and our marriage began to deteriorate under the weight of what had happened. The final blow to our relationship came when a natural disaster displaced us from our home. While I was scrambling to pack up our belongings and find us temporary housing, dealing with insurance companies and contractors, Sarah announced that she wanted a divorce. Just like that, while our lives were already in chaos, she decided she was done with our marriage and wanted out. I found myself suddenly single, living in a rental house, and trying to rebuild my life from scratch. The divorce proceedings were ugly and expensive, but I thought the worst was behind us. I was working 12-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week, trying to establish financial stability and create a new normal for myself. I even had an informal agreement with Sarah to pay $1,000 a month in child support, $500 per paycheck, because despite everything that had happened, I still wanted to provide for my kids. Then, exactly 1 year later, it happened again. On June 14th, a county sheriff showed up at my door with an emergency protection order. Tyler had allegedly been taken to the emergency room with a concussion that Sarah claimed I had given him by hitting him in a grocery store. The incident supposedly happened on June 10th, but he wasn't taken to the hospital until the 14th, the same day Sarah filed for the protection order. The timing was suspicious for several reasons. I had just signed paperwork to rent my new house, putting down over $2,000 in deposits and first month's rent. I told Sarah that because of this major expense, I wouldn't be able to pay some of our regular bills that month, but would catch them up as soon as possible. The very next day after I signed that rental agreement, Tyler supposedly got a concussion from an attack that happened at a grocery store. a grocery store with security cameras that would have captured any such incident. I knew immediately that this was retaliation for my inability to pay every bill on time due to my moving expenses. The pattern was too obvious to ignore. Both false allegations had come when Sarah felt financially or emotionally pressured, and both involved coaching the children to lie about events that supposedly happened but left no evidence. This time, I was ready. I had videos on my phone from that day showing Tyler playing happily at the park with Emma, laughing and acting completely normal. I had receipts from our grocery store trip showing exactly what time we were there and what we purchased. I had bank records proving when and where I'd signed the rental paperwork. When I spoke to a state trooper about the allegations, I laid out the entire timeline and showed him all my evidence. The trooper was clearly skeptical of Sarah's claims, especially when I explained the history of false allegations from the year before. But that didn't stop me from having to go through another CPS investigation, another round of interviews and home visits, and the constant anxiety of wondering if I was about to be arrested again. By this point, something inside me had broken. Sitting in my therapist's office a few days after receiving the protection order, I found myself saying words I never thought I'd say. I don't want anything to do with any of them anymore. The admission felt like poison coming out of my mouth, but it was the truth. 2 years of false allegations, 2 years of having my life turned upside down by people who were supposed to love me, had finally destroyed whatever parental instincts I had left. My therapist asked me to explore those feelings, and what I discovered scared me. I realized that I was living in constant terror of my own children. Every interaction with them had become a potential landmine. Every disagreement, every moment of normal parental authority could be twisted into another allegation that would land me in jail. How could I be a father when I was afraid of my own kids? The investigation dragged on for weeks. I installed security cameras around my new house, started carrying receipts for everything I bought, and began tracking my location on my phone at all times. I was living like a man expecting to be framed for murder, collecting evidence of my innocence for crimes I hadn't committed and didn't even know I was being accused of yet. In late July, we had another court hearing. When the judge asked Sarah about pressing criminal charges for the alleged grocery store assault, she simply said, "After talking with the state trooper, we have decided not to press criminal charges." No explanation, no evidence presented, just a quiet admission that there was nothing to pursue. The judge asked if there was any evidence of the assault I was accused of, and when he was told no charges were being filed, he couldn't even provide me with documentation of what had supposedly happened. That's when I made the decision that would haunt me for months afterward. I told the judge I wanted the divorce finalized and the protection order resolved, and that I just wanted to be left alone. I signed away my parental rights, agreed to pay child support, and walked away from my children's lives. The guilt was overwhelming. I would lie awake at night thinking about Halloween costumes they wouldn't have me help pick out, Christmas mornings I wouldn't be there for, school events I'd miss forever. I'd start crying thinking about how Tyler used to climb into my lap to watch cartoons, or how Emma would ask me to read her the same bedtime story 3 times in a row. But underneath the grief was a terrible sense of relief. Relief that I wouldn't have to live in constant fear of false accusations anymore. For months, I existed in a kind of emotional purgatory. I worked my 12-hour shifts, came home to my empty house, and tried to rebuild a life that felt completely hollow. I was free from the threat of false allegations, but I'd paid for that freedom by giving up my children. The trade-off felt both necessary and unforgivable. In August, I got the official paperwork confirming that the latest allegations had been found unsubstantiated. There was no evidence that Tyler had ever been assaulted, no indication that anything I was accused of had actually happened. But by then, it was too late. The damage was done, the divorce was proceeding, and I had already made my peace with walking away. That's when my orange cat, Marmalade, accidentally became my matchmaker. I had reluctantly tried a dating app, not looking for anything serious, but just hoping to get out of the house occasionally. One of my profile pictures showed Marmalade in all his orange-brained glory, and a woman named Lisa messaged me about how cute he was and how he looked just like one of her cats. We started talking about our pets, then about everything else. Lisa had the same sense of humor, the same interests, the same weird quirks that my friends joked I'd found the female version of myself. After a month of casual dating, I knew I had to tell her about my situation. I was terrified that once she knew about the false allegations, the investigation, the whole mess with my ex-wife and kids, she'd run for the hills. Instead, she hugged me and cried for what I'd been through. She told me how sorry she was that I'd endured something so horrible, and when I asked if she wanted to walk away from whatever we were building together, she said she wanted to make it official. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like maybe I could have something good in my life again. But even as I'm building this new relationship, I'm still living with the trauma of what happened. Every time a police car drives past my house, my anxiety spikes. I keep security cameras recording everything, save receipts from every store visit, and track my location constantly in case I need to prove where I was and when. I'm preparing for the next false allegation, even though I've cut all contact with the people who made them. The hardest part is not knowing why it happened. I still don't know if Sarah coached the children into making false accusations, or if Emma genuinely orchestrated both incidents on her own. I don't know how Tyler actually got the concussion that led to the second set of allegations. I don't know if there's someone else in their lives who's influencing them, or if this is just the result of a damaged family dynamic that spiraled out of control. What I do know is that I'm slowly learning to live again, instead of just surviving. Lisa and I are taking things slow, but she's helping me remember what it feels like to trust someone and be trusted in return. We've agreed not to meet each other's families until we've been officially dating for at least 2 months, and we're not attending any family functions together until next year. I'm being careful not to rush into something new, just to escape the pain of what I lost. I'm still in therapy, still working through the complex emotions of grieving children who are still alive, but no longer part of my life. Some days I feel like I made the right choice. Protecting myself from further false allegations was necessary for my mental health and freedom. Other days, I feel like the worst father in the world for abandoning my kids when they might need help I can't provide. The truth is, I may never get answers about why my family fell apart the way it did. I may never know if my children were victims of manipulation or if they genuinely wanted to hurt me. But I'm learning to live with that uncertainty while building something new and hopefully better. As I write this, I'm planning to hire a lawyer when I get my tax return, hoping to find out more about what really happened during those investigations. I want to understand how my son got that concussion, whether there's evidence of coaching or manipulation, and what I can do to protect myself if this ever happens again. But I'm also trying to focus on the future instead of just dwelling on the past. My relationship with Lisa is growing stronger. My anxiety is slowly becoming more manageable, and I'm starting to believe that maybe I deserve happiness after all. It took losing everything I thought I wanted to realize that sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. I don't know if I'll ever have a relationship with my children again, but I'm finally building a life worth living without them.